Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name's Sandy Beach, and I'm an alcoholic. And I asked them if I could sit down doing this. I had 2 new knees put in, and I'm getting along fine, but standing up for an hour might give them a little more than they feel like handling right now. So I hope this works out. At the very outset, I always like to say this, and that is I'm going to talk about a lot of the spirituality of our program using the topic that's on the program. The spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. And if you're new or even if you've been around a while and anything that I say seems to be at odds with what your sponsor is telling you, stick with your sponsor. That's the person you want to guide you along on this path. And so there's differences everywhere. So don't get confused if you go, wow, that's not what my sponsor said. Stick with your sponsor, and you'll be fine. Yeah. The other thing is that I've been scheduled for an hour and a half, which is unbearably long. And so I'm not going to make you sit here for an hour and a half. And so this is my idea. I'll talk for maybe about 45 or 50 minutes. And then we'll take a 10-minute break. And if you have any question about spirituality, or if anything I say you want to ask a question about, then we'll come back in and we'll see who wants to raise their hand and ask a question. And I'll do my best to give some sort of a perspective on it. And then at the proper time, we'll wrap it up. So that way we'll get a little stretching and we won't try to sit down for an hour and a half. So that's what I plan on doing. The other thing I'll say is that whenever I do something like this, I am sharing with you how it looks to me today, how these various principles and how the program looks to me today. This is what I see when I look at our program. And it's considerably different than it was 20 years ago. And it'll be, if I live that long, it'll be quite different 20 years from now. And that is normal, that you will see something, either a greater depth or somebody you hear will give you, oh, wow, there's another good way of looking at it. And we're constantly changing how we see the world, ourselves, other people, and God. And that, of course, is the point of the whole deal, is, as Chuck said, to be given a new pair of glasses. Something miraculous happens, and when we look around at the world, it's much better than it used to be, and nothing has changed. Just our power to see it in its true nature has changed, and that's what makes it so wonderful. That's why spirituality is so powerful. And of course, it's an individual event. It doesn't happen to everybody at the same time. And when you get to step 11, it's totally it's not a we step. It's you're on your own. You're going to go out and seek through prayer and meditation to improve this wonderful contact that we've been given through our steps. So this little sentence appears near the end of step 9, and you could say it fits in context, but it just seems like Bill was looking for a place to put that sentence, and he stuck it in there. And I think it was a good place because certainly Step 9 is where a lot of the magic of our program happens. We've done a lot of the groundwork. First of all, we surrendered, which is very difficult for anybody to do. And when we surrender, we're surrendering control of our lives. We're surrendering our judgment as to what would be best for me to someone else. Now, a human being does not relinquish that up very easily, and generally you have to be in a lot of pain. That seems to be the one common denominator that surrender has, is we're in a lot of pain. So we're willing in the beginning, okay, temporarily I'll listen to my sponsor, but I'll be taking it back soon. And hopefully we never take it back, and we turn it over to him and our group and eventually to our higher power. And from that day forward, we are trying to improve the relationship and get further guidance, more guidance, more guidance. And I think that my favorite place where this is brought out is right on page 164, excuse me, where the paragraph begins with, "This book is meant to be suggestive only." I've always thought that would be a good discussion meeting topic. This book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know but a little. Wow. These founders put everything they knew in the book, and it only contains a little, if we were to follow that thinking. So where do you get all the rest? Well, there it is in the next sentence. God will constantly disclose more to us if our house is in order. And so when we say the spiritual life is not a theory, we are now, and we have to live it, we are now getting to the place where we want to start relying on guidance from God more and more and more. And we start to realize that the big book is not the reservoir of all the answers to our problems. It doesn't contain all the information we'll need in order to have a happy life, but rather it is much more like a treasure map that leads us to the treasure, God. That's what it does. It is taking us there, and then that was the purpose of the whole book, of the whole program. And one way to look at that, and these are just my own ideas, so if they don't seem to make sense to you, don't forget I was in a nut ward for a long time, and you all came and listened anyway, so what does that say about all of us? And you'll see I'm wandering all around for different parts of our program, which this sentence really gives us the latitude to do. And that is, if we were to look at step 12 where it says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of this program, it's a singular result. That is the result. That's the point of the whole program, is this spiritual awakening, this profound personality change. This, as Chuck called it, this new pair of glasses where suddenly we look around and it's a much better world than it used to be. And so if spiritual awakening is the answer, then what's the problem that it fixes? And you ever try to think backwards and then you go, God darn, I don't know. What is the problem that awakening fixes? It implies that we're unawakened, or we're in some kind of a dream world, or we're in some kind of a, and I came up with self-centered trance. We are firm believers in all of our own ideas about everything. And all of our own ideas about everything is the world that we live in. And so everyone in this room lives in a different world than the person next to you, if you follow what I'm saying. There used to be a derogatory term. You'd say, oh, you know Harriet. She lives in her own little world. Well, so do you. How about that? And so do I. And that world is all of the ideas that we put together ever since we were able to think about things. And most of my world consists of adjectives. The events were put together by God, and then I labeled them. And then I live in that label. So we ask somebody about their childhood, and they go, it was awful. Well, the awful came from my mind. I put the adjective on. I had an awful childhood. And we just describe things that way. Just a terrible person, very boring. This is and then when we sit around wondering why we're uncomfortable, there it is. Because we put together this story. And that's why when we get up and tell our story, we're telling our story. There was a guy I heard one time, just for fun, he said, my story is divided into two parts, what happened during the years that I drank and what I thought happened during the years that I drank. And it gave us a wonderful clue that maybe there's a big difference between what I thought happened and what really happened. So maybe my childhood's divided into two parts. What happened when I was a child and what I thought happened when I was a child. And so you can see that this is what we're restricted to, our own version of everything. And when we sit around and think about things, that's what we're thinking about. We're in that world, very gently, very frightening and negative, which we all put together. And alcohol gave us a break from that world. We could go drink, and then this went off to the side, and we were free from our insistent thinking about things. And we just were suddenly, hey, how you doing? Oh, yeah, we were in this nice place that is very similar to a spiritual experience. Drinking is very close to a spiritual experience. It is, the only way you can get there is through a power greater than yourself called alcohol. And it gives us a break from our own mind. And that is the wonderful thing that we're looking for. And I said this one time to somebody, and I said, well, if there's 6.7 billion people on the planet, there's 6.7 different little worlds. 6.7 billion worlds. And he said, yeah, but then there's the real world. And the answer was, well, maybe there is, but no one lives there. Because you've got to admit, the place you live is right here. And that's what the steps address. If you want to look at it, the purpose of the steps is to destroy that world so that we can move into God's world. That's just one way of looking at the steps. We go in, what is that world constructed of? Ideas. That's what it's constructed of. It's totally built out of thought. And so we have that wonderful example, and we all know the end of this sentence. The idea that we can drink like other people has to be smashed. Well, you can see this is what we're trying to do to our whole story. We're trying to smash the world that we built, and all human beings built. It's not just alcoholics. And when you think about it, when it says that self-centeredness is the root of our problems, how could you not become self-centered? How could that happen? You're 5 years old, you're standing in the backyard, and you start looking around, and there's this, that, and you're in the center. No matter where you turn, you're in the center. So it's right visually, right off the bat, it looks like it's the center. And then you're the only one feeling your feelings. You're the only one. So how could you not be self-centered? And so I don't feel bad that I ended up self-centered. Of course I did. And so did everybody else. But it's a very painful place to be. And the reason it's so painful is I'm not the center. I'm not the center. I'm not the real center. So things look funny from in there. They don't add up. It's like when everybody on planet Earth had assumed that Earth was the center of the solar system. Well, why would it be the center? Because I live here. That's why it would be the center. If you were the king and you're, hey, is this the center? You're darn right. I'm in the center. But as they started studying things, it didn't make sense. If Earth was the center, then the motion of these planets and things around us are not adding up. And when they finally went through the pain of having the sun be the center of the solar system, everything was harmonious. All the motions, everything was fine because they changed to the real center. So for us to try and become unself-centered, it's a very difficult thing. I remember the first time my sponsor finally convinced me that I was self-centered, I just went, holy cow, he's right. And my first thought was, and I'm going to fix it. I am going to become unself-centered. Now, just imagine that. Okay, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go to not be the center? So it turns out the opposite of self-centered is God-centered. And that is the point of the steps, is to move us in our consciousness from self-centered to God-centered. And when we're there, everything looks fine. Everything's just the way it's supposed to be. So the trick is to get those new pair of glasses. To get those, and that's what the steps are for, is to do that. And to get all the things that are blocking us, to question every idea that we have in our 4-step inventory, just to look at this. And in the 8th step, to look around at the harm. What is harm? It's a wonderful discussion of harm in the 12 and 12. It's a wonderful layout of how human beings do harm each other. So we get a lot of work in order to get to this magic point in our program, which is where this sentence is, in the 9th step. And there's something about the 9th step. I think it's because we are actually going out and we're going to put it all on the line and go see people that we dread. We're going to deliberately go find an old boss and walk in there and tell them we're sorry we were such a terrible employee. We're going to face whatever it is in order to stay sober. I heard a wonderful story about this. And I can't remember where I heard it, but the sponsor was telling the story about the man he was sponsoring who was pretty much a house thief. He just broke into homes and stole stuff to sell it for alcohol and drugs. And so he had made all his other amends except these 12 houses. And he came to his sponsor and he said, I can't go up to the knock on those doors and tell them I'm the guy that took your TV set. Then I'll be in jail. And his sponsor said, okay, then don't do it and see how you feel. I thought that was a good answer. Don't do it and see how you feel. So about 6 months later, he came back and said, I have to do that. There's no way I can not do that. I'm going crazy with all of this. So knowing that there was a chance that one of those houses would call the police, they were prepared. They said, okay, we'll just have to do the time, but we have to get peace of mind. So they went through the whole thing. When it's supper time, his sponsor stayed in the car. He went up, knocked on the door. I'm the guy. And he got various reactions. Some people were upset, and he offered to pay back $25 a month for whatever amount they thought was good, and that was the way it was in some cases. In other cases, people were so blown away that somebody would come back and apologize that they just said, look, you've restored my faith in humanity, so let's call it even. So it was quite a story till he got to the last house, and a woman answered the door, and he went through this, took the TV set and this and that, and I'll be glad to stay here if you want to call the cops. And she said, you come in. I want you to tell my husband about this. And she called her husband and said, listen to what this young man. So he told the husband the same story. And he said, and I'm here to make amends. I want to know what I can do. They said, you already have. You will never know what you have done. And he says, what do you mean? She said, up until you walked in the door this afternoon, we thought our son did it and was lying. And so that amends straightened out that family so that there was total harmony. And that's sometimes what amends do. They have a greater effect on some outside force or something outside of our own. So this is a huge area. And it's not by accident. At the end of this step comes the wonderful promises. And I brought my little book along because I don't memorize things that well. And I'm going to read a few of the promises, but what I want you to listen to are the verbs in the promises. These are verbs that are normally used with magic. Do you follow what I'm saying? They're not the verb that would be used by a psychologist who would say to you, 10 sessions and self-seeking will slip away. Do you follow what I'm saying? It would be more like the guy all dressed up. Watch this, self-seeking, gone. You know what I mean? And that's what spirituality is. It is magic. It is something that can't be explained. There's no way of explaining why suddenly these things happen. And so let me just read a few of them so I can give you the idea of what I'm talking about. First of all, we're going to be amazed before we're halfway through. Does that sound like a magic show? It sounds like a magic show to me. You're going to be amazed. Yeah. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. You're going to know it. Well, how could that? Just trust me, you're going to know it. You're not going to regret the past. You're going to comprehend the word serenity. And you will know peace. I mean, just those verbs. Self-seeking will slip away. I like that, slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. There's no explanation for why any of this would happen. It just will. Our whole attitude now, like what you have, fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. Leave us. There it is. Now it's gone. Sorry, I got to go. I'll see you later. I'm going to go over here and make this guy afraid of people. But I'm leaving you, and you just realize this stuff is just happening. The reason it looks that way, it's being done by God. This is what spirituality looks like. It is happening. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. And then, one of the best descriptions of a spiritual awakening that we have in our book. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. This means I suddenly realize God. I'm having a personal experience of God. That's a big deal. I realize it's not coincidence. This does not happen accidentally. Oh my God, this is God. And I'm having the experience. So for a lot of us, this is the first time that we have this awareness that this is God. Now, whenever I get to that sentence, I like to think about the varieties of religious experience, and they talk about the two types of spiritual awakening, the one that Bill had that was his first shot. If there is a God, let him show me. He didn't do any steps. He didn't do anything. Boom! He has this incredible awareness. And then they talk about the other kind, the educational variety, that occur over time. Well, they may occur over time, but they still happen suddenly. In other words, someone else can see the change in you. You ever sponsor somebody and you can just see them. They're relaxing, their eyes are lighting up, they're starting to smile, but it hasn't occurred to them yet what it is. And then one day they go, oh, I just realized this is God that's doing this. And then that is their awakening. So you can see it was happening over time, but the awareness of it always happens quickly. That's one thing about spirituality. When the next breakthrough happens, it's, whoa. And then finally we have the last sentence. If this isn't a magician's word, I don't know what it is. They will always materialize if we work for them. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They will always, don't you like that? They will always materialize. They will always suddenly appear in your life, just out of the blue. Today could be the day. Today could be the day. And so you can see as we went from the boilerplate work throughout the first 8 steps, they're all fairly, inventory, make amends, do. Now suddenly, the whole vocabulary is different. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. It was a theory up until we suddenly realized that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. It was a theory when someone told us that the 12 steps would work. Okay, that's a good theory, but how do I know that it will work? I have to do them and have the experience that the steps give us. So you can see the experience is what makes it no longer a theory. Up until then, it's a theory that I could have financial insecurity leave me. And I believe in it because I got my sponsor, and then I just saw another new guy, and it happened to him. I thought, wow, this is amazing. He still doesn't have a job, and he's relaxed about it. How did he do that? And maybe your turn is coming. And when it does happen, you won't be able to explain it to anybody either. You just say, I don't know, I just feel relaxed about things. I just feel relaxed about things. And so you can see that this moment in our literature is preparing us for something different that was in the other steps. And we see this as we come into the 10th step. This thought brings us to the 10th step. Talks about taking inventory, etc. And then there's a sentence that just jumps out. It says, we've entered the world of the Spirit. That's quite a sentence, isn't it? We've entered the world of the Spirit. Well, we certainly have when we suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. That's the doorway into the world of the Spirit. Up until then, it was a theory. It was, yeah. And I remember, and how do we get there? It is so amazing. I wasn't going to buy any of this. I had the Catholic upbringing and scared me to death. I thought it was like Auschwitz. It was just awful, and oh my God, can't trust that God. So I had no interest in God whatsoever. And my sponsor was having a hard time getting me to show interest in any of this stuff. And I'd been around about 5 months. And he said, well, let's take a spiritual inventory. Would you be brutally honest with me about yourself? And I said, okay, I will. How often do you pray? And I took a deep breath and I said, never. I don't believe in it. I think it's stupid. I did it when I was little. It's a complete waste of time. I have no interest in it. At the end of the meetings in the Lord's Prayer, I go, no. I'm not into prayer. 0. So then he said, okay, fine. How often do you go to church? I don't. I went a long time ago. I haven't been in 30 years. I have no interest in churches. I don't even tour cathedrals in Europe. I have no interest in it. Man is fooling himself. It's a joke. I just don't know. So another 0. No churches. Well, how often do you read spiritual material? Our bookstores are filled with fabulous ideas about how to have peace of mind and all these things. I said, I don't go near that section, New Age. I wouldn't even be caught dead over there. I don't want anybody to see me touching one of those books. I'm not interested in, I'm a tough Marine. I don't need this stuff and weakness. Or I don't know what, blah, blah, blah. And then finally he says, well, how about meditation? This is one of the great sources of peace that we have. I said, no, I'm busy. I got 6 kids. I don't have any money. I'm trying to earn some money. I can't be sitting around, that's just not going to fit in. It's not. So he asked 4 questions and he got 4 zeros. And then he asked the one that just broke the bank. He said, let me ask you one more. How's it going? What kind of results do you get from no prayer, no churches, no meditation, no spiritual reading? What does it feel like to be inside of you? Oh, it's awful in here. And he said, okay, so that's like a scientific experiment. 0, 0, 0, 0, you get these kind of results. What if you tried this and then you're in charge of writing down the results? He tricked me into making it like a scientific experiment. What if you try this and see if you get different results? And we're going to have to take your word for it. You're in charge of saying what the results are. He was making an offer I couldn't refuse. All right, I'll do this because I'll be reporting 0 again. Right? That was what I thought. And then, of course, holy cow, things started happening that were absolutely wonderful. And I was reluctant to tell him because then he was going to say, oh, I guess you were wrong. And I didn't like. No one likes to be wrong. So when we talk about spirituality, we're talking about results. That's the glue that holds everything together. Results. Personal results. And that's why we have speaker meetings. I'm real big on speaker meetings. So that somebody can hear a story about this is how it was, and now I'm like this, and they get to see what the results look like. And you look up and you go, wow, that person is happy. She is just amazing. So you see the results of this program in someone else, and that adds to the fuel of doing it for yourself. Well, maybe I could have happened to me what happened to her. Maybe I'll give this a bigger effort and try to get those same results. Some time ago when I'm sponsoring people, the first meeting I have with them, I said, okay, we're going to get together 1 day a week for an hour, and I'm going to take you through all the steps, and we're going to study the literature and the 12 and 12 in the big book, and you will have a spiritual awakening. That I'll guarantee. I tell them that ahead of time. You're going to have a spiritual awakening. You are going to suddenly see everything differently. And it seems to open their minds towards it. And I'm enjoying doing that. And I'm enjoying them telling me when they're starting to see things differently. And I get to share the most precious moment in a human being's life, which is when they have that contact with their own Creator. And I would say if you were looking for probably the most useful thing you could contribute to planet Earth, it would be to help another human being have an awakening. You could not add anything more valuable anywhere. There's nothing that comes close to that. Because once that person has it, their influence on all the people they meet is positive. And when they go into the grocery store, they always treat the clerk wonderfully, even if they had to wait in line. And if their clothes isn't ready at the dry cleaning, they go, that's all right, I'll come back tomorrow. I mean, they're the exception. And their touching of other human beings is remarkable. All because they had this inner transformation. It's not something they didn't learn how to be polite. It just became part of them. So this is rather remarkable stuff. So once we've entered the world of the Spirit, this is nowhere near where I thought this talk was going to go. This is amazing. I'm over giving a talk on the 10th step. But what the heck, they're all interesting. So we might be curious when you enter the world of the Spirit. We know what the material world, we know all the rules of the material world, right? Get yours before they get theirs. I mean, there's one of the primary rules of the material world. Always look good. And so what are the rules of the world of the Spirit? We just came in it in step 10. We've just entered the world of the Spirit. And here it is. And generally we read this and then people go, yeah, but what are the real world rules of this world of the Spirit? We've entered the world of the Spirit. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. Okay, does anybody have any questions about the rules of the world of the Spirit? Any problem that comes along, ask God to remove it. Now, let's imagine, I'll tell you why this doesn't catch on. Let's imagine we all adopted this. Every discussion meeting would be identical with every other discussion meeting. Well, Mary, what do you do when you're frightened about finances? Oh, I ask God at once to remove them. I'll pass. Joe, what do you do when your boss just fires you and you're all upset? Oh, I ask God to remove it at once. I'll pass. Everyone would have the same answer to every problem that was put on the table, and the meetings would be terribly boring, wouldn't they? So we come up with answers that leave God out. What do you do when you go, oh, well, you know what I do? I work out. And I try to feel better. You can see we create non-spiritual answers in order to not involve God. This is too much of God involvement. He's into everything. Here, look at this. We ask him for everything. It's like, hey, I like a little God. I like to pray once in a while. But I don't want him running the whole show. I probably won't have any fun at all. No sex. I know there'll be no sex if I get him in there too much. So, and then we find ourselves jumping back to step six in particular. How much are we going to allow God to remove our defects? We're entirely ready to have him remove them all. Turns out that we like some of them. We don't want them in the extreme. But on the other hand, we don't want them totally gone. Can you imagine a lust-free life? I don't see any hands going up. Yeah, I don't want that. Yeah, put me down. No lust at all. Good. What the hell is that? Are you dead? No lust. No, that can't be. So, and I have this crazy routine about all that stuff. Put me down for 70% reduction in lust. Okay. Put me down for 50% reduction in greed. I don't want to be so greedy that I kill somebody for money. And so we are half measuring the entire spiritual world. And here we are, we've entered the world of the Spirit. So what does it mean? It means that there's this loving Creator who would like to help us with everything. And we would have the most comfortable, wonderful life in the world. Here's the problem. He would get all the credit. He would be in charge. I would be happy, but he would be in charge. Oh, I don't like not being in charge of something in my own life. So you can see there's a great reluctance to give up total control of our lives. And in the 12 and 12, Bill calls that the riddle of our existence. Why in God's name wouldn't we turn over everything? And he speculates, and especially when we have evidence that it works, because we turned over our drinking problem. And we were entirely willing to have God remove the obsession for drink and for the whole thing, and I haven't thought about taking a drink in 44 years. It never occurs to me any more than having arsenic would occur to me. I don't understand how drinking could help me. It's gone. So I know that if I could become entirely willing, everything else could be gone. Why don't I let it go? There's the tough part. And there's a story that C.S. Lewis, what a great writer he is. We have a lot of wonderful writers that, both our 12 and 12 and the big book suggest that we read outside literature. It's in the 11th step on both books, because there's a lot of help there. It'll help us to understand on a deeper level our program. We're not leaving our program. We're using outside literature to help us to see it more deeply. And there's some wonderful perspectives out there. Anyway, he told this story. And if you've heard this before, I apologize, but it's the best story there is to exemplify this whole problem of spirituality. And it's about the 10-year-old kid who's got a baseball game, the most important one of the season, the next day, and the coach only wants him to do one thing, get 8 hours sleep. That's it. Don't think about the game. Don't practice anymore. Don't go home and throw the ball around. Just forget it. You get to sleep, we'll win. So he tells his mother, he gets his dinner, he goes to bed, and about midnight he feels this little toothache starting. And he knows if he called his mother, she'd give him 2 aspirin, he'd be back to sleep in a heartbeat. But he decides to wait and see if it'll go away by itself. You ever do that? Well, maybe it'll go away by itself. I'm just going to sit here. So now you're waiting. You're waiting. In about 7 or 8 minutes, it's hurting a little bit more. I ought to get the aspirin so I can get better. No, maybe it'll go away. And he plays the maybe it'll go away game for 2 hours until it's hurting a little bit more. Finally he calls his mother, gets the aspirin, he goes back to sleep. But he only got about 5 hours sleep, and he wasn't sharp, and he didn't get any hits or something like that. And the question is, why in God's name did he wait 2 hours before he called for his mother? And the answer is a very spiritual answer, that he knew his mother. He knew her very well. And he knew that she wouldn't stop with the 2 aspirin. The next day she would make a dental appointment for him to go to the dentist to see what was wrong with that tooth. And he knew the dentist, that the dentist would look at that tooth, but he would also look at every other tooth in his mouth while he was there, and he would end up with a series of appointments until he had perfect teeth. He didn't want perfect teeth, he wanted 2 aspirin. But the only way to get 2 aspirin was to also get perfect teeth. That is called spiritual health. You want perfect health? You got it. You want less than perfect health? Do it on your own. You see the dilemma we're in? You don't want God all the way in? Okay, go improve your life yourself. So we run around and find self-help books in order to avoid using God. That's the human dilemma that we're in. And so when we say it's not a theory, we have to live it. What we're saying is we have to find a way of allowing more God into our life in spite of the part of us, our human ego, that doesn't want that. I don't want any more in here than I need to get by. So that to me is kind of what this whole sentence is talking about, is to struggle with how much God we'll let into our lives. And that's a personal decision, it's a personal struggle, and it goes on for the whole time we're sober. We will be working on that. How could I What else could I give up? What else am I wrong about? And believe me, if you realize that that's the way it is, then you don't feel guilty that it's that way, and you can actually have fun with yourself as you try to move along this trudge the road of happy destiny. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break, and those of you that want to come in and ask questions, come on back in, and I'll be glad to try and answer them. Thank you for your attention. Okay. Let me just offer this. I have some very close spiritual advisor friends, and when something happens that gets me all upset, where I'm very angry, I go and talk to them about it, and they help me see the whole situation differently. And there was no reason to have gotten angry in the first place. Now, the power to see it differently, we can't do on our own because you can't see anything clearly if you're upset. So part of getting unupset is to go to someone else that you trust and say, this happened, be as accurate as you can, and they will come back with one of two things. It was totally their fault, forgive them. Or you're the one that was out of line, you have to make an amend. Either way, you get back to being peaceful about it. The problem is you can't do it on your own. You follow what I'm saying? You have to get the help from someone else. Yes?
I just wanted to say something I learned in another program.
Pause is big if you go to the 10th step in the 12 and 12, self-restraint. It's the same thing. And a lot of people try to have a 5-second cushion between them and the whole world. Another way to practice it is, a lot of people have a problem with car driving, other drivers. It just hits their hot button every day. So they go, now next Thursday, you allow everyone to drive any way they want. So then you go, okay, so as you go out of your driveway, you go, everyone can drive any way they want today. And, of course, you can't get upset because you've already allowed them. They can cut you off. They can do all that. That's fine. It's Thursday. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So you can see the practice that we got of advanced flexibility. My friend Ed Chandler used to say, as I go out the door, I let 5 people be wrong ahead of time. Do you see what I'm saying? And it sounds silly, but that's what pause, self-restraint, consists of, is this secret time envelope, a 10-second cushion around us to protect us from everything so that we don't, it happens, boom. You know, the boss comes in and says, did you write this memo? Yes, I did. This is terrible. This sucks. And then we yell at him, God damn you, I quit. And then we go, God damn, I need that job. I hope he didn't hear me. But it's too late. Boom, the sound is over there. Oh, if I just had 10 seconds to... Anyway, that's very good. Yes, sir. Good. That's a great question. One of the problems with spirituality is it works. It does make the world better. It makes you happier. It makes you, oh my God, this is more like it. Now, once that happens, without our realizing it, very sneakily, our ego slides back in and takes credit for it. The gratitude that we felt when we were first put in this wonderful new position starts to fade, and we get the illusion that we're a different person than we were when we started. We get the illusion that we're much more self-sufficient now than we were when we first came to AA. Self-sufficient means I need God less now than I did when I first came into AA. And the only thing that's holding us up is God. We didn't do any of it. We are not self-sufficient, but we have the feeling like we are. Look at me, I'm really different than I was. And I had something I made up years ago. It's called an ego prayer. You got to watch out if your ego is coming up with a prayer. Do you follow what I'm saying? This is going to be a bad prayer. But it'll be disguised to look like a good one. And it'll go something like this: God, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for what you've done in my life. You've taken this broken person, turned me into a good father, a good husband, a good worker. You've placed me in a position where people respect me, where they're asking me to do things. And I just want to thank you for putting me in a position where I no longer need your sorry ass. That's a bad prayer. But it sounds like we're expressing all this gratitude, but we're really saying goodbye. And that's what I heard you saying, is that the letter is the ego takes over and thinks we're now capable of working a good program on our own and show other people how to do it. And that is called spiritual pride, and it's part of the disease. It happens to spiritual leaders all over the world. That suddenly their ego suddenly comes back in, and now they got trouble. Anyway, great question. Somebody else. There's an interesting thought about contact with God. As we become aware, like somewhere around page 25, it says God is everything or he's nothing, he either is or he isn't, and then comes the, what's your choice going to be? Like, if you choose that God is everything, he is. If you choose he's nothing, he is. And you live with the results of those two choices. You choose that there is no God, fine. But as we go along, we realize that God is part of us. It's impossible to be separated from God. It's absolutely impossible. Well, then how do we experience separation from God? We make up a story that we're separated from God. That's the only way to be separated from God, is to tell ourselves we're separated, even though we're like this. And our story is the final word. If I say I'm separated, and so part of it is to realize that the only thing separating me from God is my idea.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. And so it is. When I realize that, I start laughing at myself for even thinking that I'm separated. Because it's like a leaf on a tree making believe it's not part of the tree and coming up with its own little life. Well, I'm the third leaf on the bottom branch, and I don't have as good a view as the guys up there, and I'm a big leaf. I do more work than the other ones producing photosynthesis. I'm getting screwed being on this tree, and you can see he's like one of us. And he's really part of the tree. Do you see what I'm saying? There is no separate identity for any of us unless we make it up. And we like to make it up because then we can be separate from everybody. We have our own little world. We're in charge of it, and it sucks. But we don't want to give it up because we won't be in charge of anything. So it's all part of the same thing. Well, it would be, let me talk about our literature, and we go all around the country. Anybody moved to different areas and you suddenly find out, holy cow, they do it different out here. You've been there. You've walked into a meeting and you quote the 12 and 12 and they go, we don't mention the 12 and 12 here.
Do you follow what I'm saying? Oh, yeah, Toledo, Cincinnati, Akron, and Cleveland all had their own little... Yep. Okay, so that, yeah. I did some... Anybody who studies our history, you start reading Bill Wilson's letters and you start seeing this stuff. And one of the worries that he had was that the program would become too dogmatic. These are spiritual principles. They're not... There's nothing where you can say, this is the official right way of doing it. But there's a lot of books or there's pamphlets that have been written where some AA members said, no, there is a way of doing this. Type, and they type it all up and they go, there. This is how you do it here in Akron. And he was worried that as time went on, the book would become biblical. And so that's why, like in the 3rd and 7th step prayers, I mean, if you were to say the 3rd step prayer correctly, you would make up one of your own. Because it says, we say something like this. We don't say this, we say something like... You could see that he's trying to infuse flexibility. And someone came to him and showed him a book about programs. Some of them were self-help, some of them were spiritual, that people put together that succeeded, where it really accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. And it didn't take long before they were biblicizing their program. They were going, this is how it's done. This is the only way to do a 4-step inventory. You do, this, and in reality, we do it the way our sponsor shows us. And as you go around the country, you realize, man, there's more different ways of doing this. And so that is what I was saying. What would you say if you were trying to be very dogmatic about the sentence, this book is meant to be suggestive only? That would be a bad topic. Because you wouldn't like to think of it being suggestive only. What do you mean suggestive? This is the deal. And of course it's the deal, but it's not the point of it all. God is the point. You know what I'm saying? So you're right. There's just all different ways. I was at a convention somewhere, and this woman was sharing, and you should have seen the room. She said, well, my group in New York, we only use the 12 and 12. And you could have heard the gasp in the audience. There was quite a few thoughts. Well, they're doing it wrong. You could feel that in the room. They're doing it wrong. Well, she was very happy and had a lot of years of sobriety. So I measure by how happy people are. But that's just one person's opinion, and you know what that's worth? Nothing. Anyway, great question. Hi. You raise a great point. If you couldn't hear her question, she's talking about as you do a 4-step inventory and you start looking around and really thinking about it, there's certain areas that you want to keep for yourself and you're not going to involve in the inventory, maybe relations or finances or something like that. That's what I'm saying. You don't want to give it up. That was the point I was making earlier. That is the heart of being a human being. In other words, all of these character defects and all of these ideas that we have, that's our kingdom. That's where we live and we're in charge. I mean, I'm God in that kingdom. Now they start talking about this other God. And I'd like his help, but I don't want him coming in screwing up my kingdom. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can work on my drinking problem. That's great, but don't come in here messing around with how I do business. You know what I mean? Total honesty. Have you ever been a businessman? What are you talking about, total honesty? I would like the reputation for being honest, but I certainly don't want to be held down to actually being honest all the time. Sometimes you have to screw the other guy. So don't get that God in here. I won't make any money. Okay, you can see how that works? You just don't want you got to keep part of the kingdom for yourself. You know, you a little piece of territory, whatever it is. I'll tell you, I used to be in the Marine Corps, and we had a big thing in AA, and I really think it's correct that we got to eliminate the profanity. And I went along with it, except in every talk I sneak one word in for the Marine Corps. So you can see I'm just not giving up on... I'm going to save that little piece. I'm going along with it 98%, but got to slide one little word in. Anyway, that you're talking about the problem. Okay? Yes. No, think about this. The thing that causes human beings pain is willfulness. Willfulness, meaning it has to be the way I want it. Willingness produces peace right away. And there's a sound that, I call them pigeons, they call them sponsees today. There's a sound that pigeons make that I love, because when they make that sound, I know they're on the verge of getting spiritual. And that sound is, okay. Do you know the sound? No, I want you to do it that way. I don't want to do it that way. I'm the sponsor. You're going to have to do it. I don't want to do it that way. Then get another. Okay. And as soon as they say okay, they're moving into willingness. And willingness is where all the peace is. So yes, I insist that we do it my way so that they can become willing. And so sponsors, that's what you do. You are going to be in charge of the whole operation. You're a spiritual guide. You're taking somebody from the darkness to the light. Their only job is to measure the results, report on the results. And the only question a new person should ask is, what do I do next? Yes? Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. The danger would be if you saw something that you thought would be a substitute for AA, and you just say goodbye to AA and you're going to try this path. And, well, I never do that. AA is the core centerpiece. It'll always be, these 12 principles will always be the centerpiece. Outside, either speeches, teachers, literature, whatever it is, are to help me to understand more deeply AA so that I never go off. If there is a principle that, if you're studying something where there's no God or where there is, you could still get some real good ideas about how to live or how to think about things, but you don't transfer over to, well, I guess I'll have to give up God if I want to read this material. I always stay in AA and use that and it's been very helpful. It really helps me see a lot of understanding that sentence I was talking about, or understanding, the idea that the big book is a treasure map. I probably got that idea reading something. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It is not the answer to everything. It is the map to the answers. Yes, sir. Life can give, everybody has experiences that are painful or confusing or whatever it is. Did it break the connection or cause me to doubt whether there was a God? And in all honesty, I haven't. And I've been through a couple divorces and damn near bankruptcy, just the standard stuff that can happen. And I never did have this, my faith go, well, there really isn't a higher power. It was, this is just going to be tough and I'm going to go through it, and I always knew it was going to turn out. Now, recently I had my knees replaced, and there is a pain level involved in that was a little higher than I was prepared for. And it turned me in to a selfish, self-centered whiner, where the only thing that existed in the universe was me and my pain. And Carol's here, she'll vouch for that. And I had lost contact with everything. It just shocked me that raw pain could take away that connection. But it did. It was a terrible awareness that had come right in and went right between me and God. And all that was left was this whining ball of self-centeredness. There was nothing else in the world. I didn't care, but you could come in and say, well, this happened to so-and-so. It's too bad. I got my problems in here. And it came back, but the thing that I'm getting at is I was astonished that happened. I could see what could happen to you, but I couldn't believe. So do you see the spiritual pride right there? I couldn't believe that happened to me, and that was spiritual arrogance. To be surprised that could have happened. So anyway, that was the only thing. We're right in the end of the time. Is anybody? Yes, sir. How about the last one? Hi. Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. That's a good comment. That's a very good comment. And that's why I like speaker meetings, because you do hear the spiritual moment in the person's talk. And discussion meetings used to be, at least that's the way my sponsor had me do it. If you were going to present a situation, like, well, I got fired and blah, 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 you shared the problem, and then you shared the AA solution to the problem that you worked that made you comfortable again. And today we just share the problem sometimes and just go on and on and on. And it also makes me feel this, and now I feel lost, and I feel this, and I feel that. And then that's the end. And the poor new person is left going, oh, my God, this is really terrible in here. There's nothing but all these problems. And there's really a solution connected to that problem that was left untold. And it's too bad, but we can thank the treatment centers or somebody for getting us off on that course. Hey, we're out of time. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And I really had fun.
We hope you have enjoyed this recording. To obtain additional copies, receive a free catalog of AA and Al-Anon talks, or to find out about our tape and CD of the Month Club, call Encore Audio Archives at 1-800-878-1308, or visit our website at www.12steptapes.com.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.